Uchenna, play fake to Walker. Sam rolls out near side, throw is made, touchdown, Seahawks! Jackson Smith-Njigba from 12 yards. Second and 4 from his own 34. McMahon throws, intercepted again. It's Nwosu. He's inside the 20, the 15, the 10, the 5. Touchdown Seahawks. 2 interceptions, 2 touchdowns for the Seahawks. A 34-yard return. Lofa Nwosu, welcome to the NFL, baby. 35, he's on the run, Lynch. 40, pushes him at 35, look at him go. He's down to 20, 15, he could go. He is going to go. Touchdown Seahawks. Oh my word. A 67-yard run.
Welcome in, everyone, to another Seahawks aftermath / post-game reaction show. It seems to be happening a lot, Mike, lately, that these kind of combine into 2 shows. But welcome in, everyone, to another live episode of the Hawks Eye podcast. And we're going to break down the Seahawks 20-12 win over the Jags. We'll look ahead a little bit to the Houston game, what happened around the NFC West. And who knows, you know what, we might talk a little bit about that team that Mike's currently supporting a hat of there in the Seattle Mariners, as they are now up 2-0 on the Toronto Blue Jays in the ALCS, which is fantastic news and a good way to end this weekend and start this week as well, I should say. But Mike, how you doing, man? And how'd you feel about Seattle's victory in Jacksonville?
Doing great, man. Hope you've had a good weekend. Awesome sports week for anyone that's a fan of the Pacific Northwest, right? I think you're even a bigger fan if one of my co-hosts is a Husky fan and not an Oregon Duck fan. I think it was a really good week for them. No, it was really cool. Just kind of the way the ALDS Classic kind of ended. I think even Mike Macdonald and the Seahawks, some of them talked about it, just like the energy that kind of is given the city and everything. And then coming off like one of the most entertaining games in Seahawks history, our loss to the Bucks, you go to Jacksonville, and a game that you and I talked about, I thought that was actually kind of a letdown game for Jacksonville. And you can make a case maybe that happened, but I thought Seattle just walked in there and walked out of there like feeling and performing like they were clearly the better team, which I think is kind of what you and I want to say it was expecting, but we were hoping, right? Like we're hoping we're better than that team that like is trying to make the up, even though like we're kind of both in a similar spot, if that makes sense. I feel like we're just in a different class than the Jaguars. And I think we showed that with an unbelievable defensive performance. We're going to talk about it, but shout out to Mike Macdonald, the way him and his coaching staff rebounded and called that game on Sunday against the Jaguars offense that had been playing pretty well. And then again, just what we're seeing with this offense, some bad, some good, and some of it is just like astonishing how amazing it's been. It was great. And then you go from there and you have this unbelievable 2-game run with the Mariners. And like, it's weird. As a Seattle fan, you're not used to both teams being good at the same time. We've never seen these 2 teams play around the same time together in the last 25 years. Like, it's pretty crazy. And just real, like Geno Suarez, man, good vibes only.
Yeah, if you think about it, last time the Mariners were in the ALCS, the Seahawks were playing at Husky Stadium, and they still had what we now consider the throwback uniforms.
I know.
Where were their actual uniforms. They had just basically traded for Matt Hasselbeck. He was starting, and they had Trent Dilfer come in for relief. Like, you got to think that's as far back as that whole scenario goes. But talking about this game down in Jacksonville, yeah, it was very interesting to see how this defense was going to respond after that Buccaneers, kind of collapse of a game for them and just breakdown after breakdown. And, as we got close to the kickoff, we kind of thought earlier in the week, Mike Macdonald had said, hey, Devin Witherspoon's going to practice. Maybe Julian Love might practice towards, and then we find out no Wolin, no Witherspoon, no Love. So in retrospect, 3 Pro Bowl level players are out of your secondary. You're going in with basically backups again, and probably Shaquille Griffin, who hasn't had a meaningful snap since last year because he didn't really play in the preseason much, right? And the only guy you were getting back was, Tank Lawrence, right? You're only getting DeMarcus Lawrence back. And I did my preview show with Brandon Kane from the Hawks Nest, and that was one thing we talked about on Saturday was I said Lawrence needs to kind of have a game where he's getting 2 sacks and constantly in the backfield and creating havoc, and they need somebody else, whether it's Uchenna or Byron Murphy or, Big Cat, somebody else. They have to get pressure on Lawrence. They have to get them in 3rd and longs. Well, either Mike Macdonald watched the show and decided he was going to do some different stunt packages. They blitzed a little bit more, which was good to see. But that whole entire front 7 created havoc all day long for Jacksonville. They couldn't run the ball. 7 sacks, 33 pressures on 42 dropbacks. Like, that's ridiculous numbers. And that's not something we can get used to in Seattle, but that was just a byproduct of, I think, getting a veteran defensive lineman back that is not a guy that, a lot of people thought going into this offseason is, oh, he's just here. It's kind of like what Pete Carroll and John used to do with veteran guys when they brought him in as, you're a locker room dude. No, Lawrence is a locker room dude, but a guy that can still play ball really well. And so was Cooper Kupp, who is another guy we got to see kind of go off a little bit in this game and have some crucial catches at moments. But, let's talk about the game, Mike. So, as the captain said, set the tone. Gritty wins travel. This Seattle Seahawks team can play on the road and play anywhere on the road, it seems, with Mike Macdonald and this group of players, because it doesn't matter where they go. They basically make it their home when they're there in some respects, and the way has become home for Seattle. What does this tell you about this Seattle team's toughness, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, it's just it's their ability to lock in and focus, right? And some of it can be matchups, but like at the end of the day, Mike Macdonald is 10-1 on the road. Like in the NFL, that is unbelievable. Like that is just, we're talking about a historic run. And it's not just like, oh yeah, well, like last year they got, the Falcons when they were kind of in a bad spot with Kirk Cousins, or the Cardinals or the Rams benched all their guys. Like, no, so far this year, like each win has been against a team that's been above 500, right? Like when we went to Pittsburgh, they were feeling good about themselves. That was a home opener. You and I both know, like, despite that team's flaws that I think you and I both feel about the Steelers, that's a tough game to win. And they kicked their ass pretty much after, some shooting themselves in the foot in the first half. You go to Arizona, and I think that Arizona team's a lot different than the Arizona team that we're watching now with all the injuries and stuff. But like, I know that team was coming off a disappointing loss to the Niners, and they had lost James Conner. Clearly they haven't been able to bounce back since then. But at the time, that still felt like a game where whoever won that game was going to stay in the NFC West early hunt, right? And that has proved to be true. And then you go to Jacksonville, coming off one of their biggest regular season wins over the last decade, 2 decades. Yeah, Monday night, so an early, like a short week, but just the vibes were feeling good. New coaching staff, a team that we don't see very often, and it looked like a game where Mike and Durday and the defensive side of the ball knew almost every single play that was going to happen, because it felt like whenever they didn't, Brian Thomas was running free or someone was wide open, but that only happened 3 or 4 times, or some crucial mistakes. Like, it's amazing what happens, how good you can be on the road when you can protect your quarterback and you can make their quarterback's life a living hell. And I thought Trevor Lawrence is a very flawed but talented player, right? But like, without a doubt, he is oozing with talent physically. And I thought he actually did not play a bad game. I think he knew after that first quarter, oh my gosh, I am going to have to run for my life the moment I say hike. And he literally did. We hit him 17 times, right? What did Brady Henderson say? According to ESPN, that's the most in Seahawks in the last 25 years.
Yep.
That's how far back they research. 30 pressures, that's the most that they go back and research. 7 sacks is unbelievable. I think you can make a case. We could have had probably a dozen sacks, and Trevor like maneuvered his way out of at least 4 or 5 of those. And it seemed like every time he did, he was able to manufacture a big chunk play. Like the couple of the touchdowns or the big plays they had was either a complete breakdown by our secondary, which was, a mangled unit, right? It was our JV squad out there. And then you had just him breaking free, and then the Josh Jobe just getting misplayed on the ball and giving up another score. I think if you take some of those plays away, there's a chance this game is 31-3, right? And I feel like you and I have had this conversation against the 49ers, against the Steelers, against the Cardinals. We saw it against the Saints. And we kind of saw it here on Sunday. Like, man, if this team can avoid a couple of crucial offensive mistakes and a couple of like just the mistakes on the defensive side of the ball and get a little bit healthier, then all those DVOA things, all those efficiency numbers, I really think I can start to believe that this is a team that is like, no, this is a 12 to 13 win talent team that is going to be there in the final 8, the final 4 of with a shot of going to the Super Bowl, because just like the way they took apart the Jaguars. Like, people forget Trevor Lawrence only got sacked 6 times in the first 5 games. Like 6 times, and we sacked him 7 times on Sunday. Just an absolute masterclass by Mike Macdonald. He called himself out after getting his ass kicked by Tampa Bay and Baker Mayfield, which, spoiler, almost everyone has gotten their butt kicked by Baker Mayfield when it matters. And he came back and he put his money where his mouth was, and they took it to Jacksonville, and they got another 10 a.m. East Coast road win.
Yeah, there's definitely some things. Like, you look at this game, JSN and Sam Darnold currently are the Seahawks offense. And that's something to me that's still very concerning. Like, our run game is not meshing the way it should be. And you know what? As much as, there's the Anthony Bradford hater club, and there's the Anthony Bradford is actually good club, and then there's this group in the middle that's like Anthony Bradford is serviceable, but there's massive flaws there. I rest myself in that group. Like, I think he's definitely improved as a pass protector this year. He has had far fewer whiffs as a pass protector, but it's like almost the fact that he's gotten to be a better pass protector. His run blocking, which was supposed to be his strength, has completely disappeared. He is a liability in this run system, which to me, I think speaks volumes to the fact that, when I watch him do his run game reps, there are issues. Like on one of the runs in that 3-down sequence within the 10-yard line of Jacksonville early in the game where he had to settle for the field goal, he whiffs on like 2 of the run plays, like completely. He's on the ground. And like, if you're supposed to be this road grading, run blocking right guard, I expect those whiffs to come in the pass game, not in the run game where we're letting you do what you're supposed to do well. So
100%.
I think, to me, that's where the issue is with Bradford. Is I like what he's doing in the pass protecting. Sam's being kept clean most of the game. It's the run blocking where I'm having the biggest issue with it. But outside of that, like, we look at our run game, 26 carries, 60 yards. We average 2.3 yards a carry. That's not going to cut it. Walker, 10 carries, 34 yards. Charbonnet, 12 carries, 24 yards. And I got to figure this out. Why do we keep tossing to Charbonnet? Like, it doesn't make sense. He doesn't have the speed to get to the edge and actually affect the toss properly. It drives me absolutely nuts. But the thing is, you look at, even the flip side in this game for, purpose, we had 8 catches for JSN, 162 yards and a touchdown. 3 catches for Barner, 71 yards. 2 catches for Cup, 40 yards. That still needs, in my opinion, to be a little bit more evenly distributed, because even Mike Macdonald talked a little bit today on his 7-10 being like, yeah, it's great. We can do all this stuff with JSN, but we need the other pieces to kind of become part of this offense. You started to see it a little bit, but it's like, until teams, I think, truly take JSN away from a game and force Clint Kubiak and Sam Darnold to go somewhere else with the ball, it might not happen that way. And that's where I look like, Elijah Royal, 1 catch, 6 yards. Torrey Horton didn't have a reception the whole game. I don't think he was even targeted. And Mike alluded to one of their plays. He was open on a deep shot that they could have taken.
Yeah.
That's what worries me a little bit with the offense. Like, I love what's going on with the offense. And I think it's far better than it was last year. I'm not trying to be a negative, negative person or point of view. I'm just pointing out there's these things that are sticking out to me. And my coach hat goes on going, we're a little imbalanced. We're a little imbalanced in our pass game. Our run game isn't coming along the way it should. Like, I really think there needs to be, and some people may hate this, I think after this bye coming up, there needs to be a real look back at, okay, is Anthony Bradford really that much better than Cable do at this point, than Christian Haynes? Because there are other people that are seeing it out there that are respected analysts that, aren't just, fluff and smoke going, yeah, Anthony Bradford's, the great thing, or he's absolute garbage. It's like, does one of your other guys give you an opportunity, or do they make a move for somebody? Like, that's another thing that could be there. They could still make a trade at that point. We'll talk about someone else, I think, that, another position group that I think has jumped the priority chain in Seattle for a trade deadline move. But the one thing I'll say is, before we finish this out, is a team that can travel on the road, regardless if it's a 10 a.m. game or it's a late kickoff or whatever, that can play on the road, is a tough team to beat. Now, they just got to figure out how to do it at home.
Yeah, I think, like, another thing to think about is it should give you confidence, right? Like if this team was to fall short of winning the West, I think this team looks very comfortably like a playoff team. Obviously, health is a big part of it, and how the schedule shakes out, we'll find out. But if this is a team that does have to go on the road, I feel good about our chances. One thing we have not seen from this group yet that I am interested to see is how will this team play on the road when the weather gets bad, when it starts to get cold, right? We've gone to Jacksonville, Arizona, and we went to Pittsburgh, literally the best time of the year to go to Pittsburgh, right? So if you can't run the ball, you can have a top 3 quarterback like Seattle currently has right now playing. You can have the first or second best wide receiver in the NFL like JSN is playing right now. You can have a really impressive, considering what you've had the last decade, offensive line, considering the warts that it currently does have. But what does that look like if you got to go to Lambeau Field in January? What does that look like if you got to go to Philadelphia? What does that look like if you got to go to Tampa and it's pouring down rain, right? Like I just would feel so much better if we can figure out a way to have some efficiency with our running game. Like I think you can make a case. Does the JSN play action hit? Does the AJ Barner play action dagger hit if we aren't being, really focused on that running game? We hit that to Torrey Horton. That pass is a touchdown if I don't know who got pushed into him, but if you give Darnold like a nanosecond longer, I think that pass is made perfectly. And that's another score. And I can't remember what the score was. That might have made it 10-6, or that might have made it 17-6. I can't remember exactly, but we're really close on those big shots. But those big shots are really, really hard to come by in January in cold weather places. Sometimes you have to grind out drives, and you got to have that 7 or 8 minute drive where you milk the clock and you just take away a team's soul. And we have not quite yet seen the Seattle Seahawks offense do that. And everything that Macdonald wants is built on that. And so I'm really interested to see trade deadline coming up. What does he do to try and get that? Because I still think like you just said, Mike's happy, but or he might be pleased, but he's not happy because we're still not fulfilling his vision, which is we're gonna hurt your soul either way, whether that's big play action shots or whether that is those, as we remember the 2012, 13, 14 Seahawks, just those 7 or 8 minute drives where they were not stopping us no matter what. And that was just soul crushing for opposing teams. And we got to figure out a way to get there.
We do. And to your point, Mike, basically the worst weather games they're going to have to play in the rest of this regular season, maybe week 9 at Washington. Who knows what the weather will be like there. They've got to go to Tennessee for a 10 a.m. game, but that might not be so bad. Then we're home to Minnesota, which might be the worst weather game we play is actually in our own park in November 30th. Then you're in Atlanta inside. Then you've got Indianapolis, and that again is going to be a game in Seattle. So we'll see what the weather's like. Then you're in LA, then you're to Carolina, and then you're to San Francisco. It's not exactly like, to your point, you're going, but in the playoffs, if you have to go to a Green Bay, if you have to go to one of these places where the weather's not great, that could be, if you had to go to Philadelphia, that's another, place. And the way Philadelphia's playing, it could be a viable option. But, let's talk about these numbers in this game, Mike. So there's a couple key things that stand out. Obviously, Darnold, 16-27, 295 yards, 2 touchdowns. He had 1 sack. He's playing lights out football. Like, we can't really say anything else. JSN, 88 catches, 162 yards and a touchdown. Then we go to the defense, 7 sacks, 3, then they had the 33 pressures. They only allowed 59 rushing yards. Travis Etienne had 27 yards on 12 carries. Trevor Lawrence, 3 on 9. Like, we bottled up the run game again. Now, they did throw for over 250 yards, but that was kind of like Brian Thomas's coming out game, it seemed like. And don't even get me started on his freaking touchdown, because I was about to throw my remote through the TV when I see Shaq just not even reroute him, just kind of lets him have this free pass. It's like, if it's really a bubble screen, dude, he's going to block you. Yeah, but even if there's no help, the safety ain't getting there in that space. You have him and Nicky Manwari standing right there with one guy. It drove me absolutely nuts seeing that. And then you look through the rest of it. Nick had a high in tackles. He led the team with, a total of 9 tackles. But the interesting thing to me in all of this was, and this is where I'll kind of tie this into the trade deadline piece right now, is what is going on with Tyrese Knight, because he only played 2 snaps in this game. Drake Thomas took all of the snaps. Knight's playing time has gotten less and less and less. Is it started? Like, I think, does weak side linebacker become a viable trade spot now for Seattle and kind of jumps the priorities to an extent, or is on or near to the same level as getting an elite pass rusher? Because if we lose Ernest Jones, are you really comfortable with a Drake Thomas or Patrick O'Connell, Drake Thomas combo, or Patrick O'Connell, Tyrese Knight combo? Like, I'm not.
No, you bring up a good point. Like, we've been talking for months of, man, it'd be nice to get a closer. Man, it'd be nice to get a closer. You're right, though. If Ernest Jones goes down, we're screwed, right? Like, I don't know what you do in that situation. And yeah, I thought Drake Thomas played pretty good. Got a nice sack. Can't remember if that was on a blitz or if he just read that or what. I have to go back and look at it, but I thought overall he had a good game. But what was it? Tyrese had 2 snaps, and it was just because of an injury. And then after that, he went right back to the bench or some special team stuff. Like, whatever happened this offseason to now, like injury, personal related, whatever it is, this feels like a lost season for Tyrese Knight, which is interesting because that is a guy that Mike pounded the table for at the draft. He wanted him, and he was, I would say, borderline exceptional last year. Like, I thought he had a really good rookie year. I thought it was a guy that we all penciled in, that he was going to be that partner in crime for Ernest Jones for the next few years. And I mean, it's not even a question. He might not even be part of the future. So yeah, I think you're right. I think if the option is there, you have to bring in a linebacker. Simply because almost that insurance of if Ernest Jones goes down. And I don't know how you don't look around the NFL. I know we're going to talk about the state of the NFC West here in a little bit, but when you lose your middle linebacker, it can really change everything, especially when they've got the green dot in the back. And Ernest Jones, I believe, has the green dot, right? He's the play caller of all that for the Seahawks defense. And like, what are those options? I don't know. I know Adam Schefter put out a few names that are starting to gain traction at the deadline. I know he said you're going to see about a dozen trades between what we've seen so far in the deadline. I think we've had 2 so far now. Like, yes, I want a closer, but yeah, I also think those are your 2 priorities. I think you almost have to trust we'll get Woolen back after the bye probably. Maybe he plays on Sunday. Love, Witherspoon, whether they come back on Monday or after the bye, like however you want to risk that, like the secondary should come back and be absolutely elite like we thought it was going to be. And you want to talk about numbers and you know, things that have come up, like Nick Emenwari looks like an immediate plug and play plus red chip type of player. Like, unbelievable. Just looks like he belongs, right? He always looked like he looked good off the bus, and now it like seeing it so far, keep that guy healthy, and I think the secondary can hold on. So I really do think you got it. If a closer becomes available as an edge rusher, you pull the plug, right? You go, you take the plunge. I think we feel good about this team enough to make that move, but none of that might matter if you get into a battle with a Baker Mayfield or another elite quarterback that knows to just pick apart the middle of the field because your linebacking core is so shit, right? And so that's what I would love to see, another move there. Who that is, I have no idea. I don't know if you have anybody in mind, but like, honestly, I would even throw in a depth piece for a 6th-round pick just to get another body in here, because it doesn't feel like Tyrese Knight is going to legitimately be a part of the 2025 Seattle Seahawks season.
Yeah, I don't know if the thing for me, and I said this on my show with Brandon on Saturday, is I'm starting to wonder if after the bye, we don't see Poop Hall get activated. Because if you think of what rookie linebackers have done, obviously Tyrese Knight last year with Mike Macdonald was first 8 weeks of the season up until the bye, you didn't see him much. Then once they figured he had learned enough, he was a starter in the back end after they made the trades that they did. I think there's a thing to be said, like Drake Thomas is the starting weak side linebacker now. Yeah. And there's only a year of age difference between the 2 of them. But there's things I think Drake Thomas does in some respects a little bit better than Tyrese Knight, even when Knight was healthy. And I think that's his coverage. I think it's his understanding of scheme and what offenses are trying to do, which I think has given him the advantage now. And you know what it could very much well be too? Tyrese Knight might have been able to handle what Mike Macdonald's defense was as the base package they ran last year, right? They didn't get into a lot of stuff. Yeah. Mike's talked about how he had to dial back the defense last year.
Yeah.
Now this defense is evolving. It's getting more and more, and you're starting to see more and more of it come out each week. And maybe it's a point of Tyrese Knight just isn't comfortable in what they're doing, and he doesn't play nearly as fast. He's thinking too much. Drake Thomas may understand the inner workings of this defense and be a better fit right now for the Seahawks. And that very well might be what it is. It's not something that, I really had thought about too much until I started thinking about back to last year and what Mike did to dial it back. And now you're seeing guys that, were a part of it kind of last year that maybe aren't seeing a certain amount of playing time this year. Like, you think of a guy like, everyone's talking about Nehemiah Pritchett. Like, Pritchett's getting some action, but he might struggle with, the evolving part of this defense, which it constantly is. And can you keep up with all the changes and the communication and the keys and the target marks and all that stuff? So I don't know. I think they need to add somebody, whether that's Paul Jr. off practice squad or whether that's somebody else, who knows. But it's definitely for me an area I would like to see them add something. But overall, when you talk about the numbers, like, here's one last question I'll leave you with Mike before we move on to the next segment here is, can Sam Darnold sustain this clean football he is playing? Not turning the ball over, 2 touchdowns, almost 300 yards. He's close to almost 70% completion percentage. Like, is this sustainable week in and week out %? We've seen it through 5 games now or 6 games. Is it truly sustainable throughout the rest of the season?
God, I hope so. Right? Like, man, you're just hoping so. But it gets to a point where I think you just have to believe what your eyes are seeing, right? Like, I think the hope is no longer like a thing. It's more of like, no, it's factual that what we are seeing is just truly elite talent. And he has been provided the perfect environment, a top tier defense, and a young and improving offensive line that right now is playing really well at protecting the pass. An offensive scheme that is literally built to allow him to be at his best at the things that he's great at and keeps him away from the things that he's not, right? I think you and I think we've brought this up a few times, but like, I watch him and it just feels almost like a souped up, as you've mentioned, Matt Hasselbeck in the home run scheme. Just a match made in heaven. I say it reminds me a lot of like Purdy and Jimmy Garoppolo, and I mean that in a positive way, but he's like a souped up, much more talented version of those two, and probably doesn't have the same amount of talent that the 2019 and 2023 49ers, those Super Bowl runner-up teams had. But like, I mean, those guys look really good on an all-star team, and Sam is running a very similar setup and looks amazing on a very good team right now, right? And it's just like, man, like, everything's there. What if we got him another weapon? What if we did improve the interior offensive line? What does this look like as Zabel continues to evolve and grow? Like, it just, what if we get a running game? How deadly can this be? Like, does this end up being like, this is getting ahead of myself, but like, if some of these things can come together, you're looking at like a team kind of like the Ravens were 2 years ago, where offensively and defensively, Mike Macdonald was on that team, just overwhelmed. I think it's going to go down as one of the best teams to have never made a Super Bowl or won a Super Bowl. That Ravens team, just absolutely lethal on both sides. And I wrote about it, and I think my article just dropped of my 4 down territory. I talked about this team like is starting to develop blue chip players, right? And I think for years we all agree like this team has had a lot of really good players that might make the occasional Pro Bowl, but isn't necessarily like a foundational like franchise piece. It's not like who's going to be on the cover of the Super Bowl when the Seahawks are in the Super Bowl. Like, who are they going to promote? Because those are your superstars. And I think right now you're seeing Sam Darnold is playing like a blue chip player. And he has a wide receiver in JSN that is playing like a blue chip player. And I'm going to choose to believe that this is what these two guys are going to be. And we'll see how the season progresses. But there is nothing that Sam, yes, has he made a bonehead mistake every once in a while? Yes. Like, has there been fluky plays that have cost him and the Seahawks some wins? Yes. But I think there's been more fluky plays than like those classic Jimmy Garoppolo, what the hell are you doing moments, right? Like that we all knew to come into the Jared Goff moments from the Rams days. I think that Sam is above that tier of quarterback play, and he understands what he's doing. And again, I think at the end of the day, we stumbled upon our own Baker Mayfield. I really do. I think that's what has happened here. And I don't think the numbers lie. And as long as we can keep him upright and we can keep on executing these play action plays, there's not a better quarterback right now in the NFL at slicing up these deep play action passes, these big shots, like just dagger plays than Sam Darnold.
No, I agree. And I think the one thing, you can kind of go back and look at with Sam is now we've got a 25, 26 game sample size over the last 2 years. He's had 2 bad games in that. Other than that, he's played mistake-free good football. I said it when, they signed Sam, that if he played well and what he's close to what he did in Minnesota, which I think the numbers may not be the same. They might not be as gaudy as they were in Minnesota, but I think he's actually playing
out of necessity. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think he's playing more efficiently now and better as a quarterback overall than he did for Minnesota. I don't see a reason that Sam isn't our franchise quarterback for, the next 6 years here in Seattle.
Right.
Which
the funniest thing is?
Interest factor. Yep.
I think, what did everyone tell us after we signed him from Minnesota? Oh, well, good luck without Justin Jefferson. And now, JSN's having like a better season than almost any receiver has ever had. It's like, again, is it sustainable? I don't know. Am I saying JSN's better than Jefferson? No, I'm not. But right now, through 6 games, like he is putting up a historic season, and that's a two-way street. That's Sam and JSN doing it, along with the offensive line.
So let's move on to these trenches, Mike, because the defensive line stopped the run. And did they ever get after Trevor Lawrence and make his day a living hell? So you had Murphy. I think now it's starting to develop. You're starting to see the player Seattle drafted last year. Murphy is becoming one of the
100%.
best young interior defensive linemen in the NFL. You got Big Cat in there who made his presence felt again. You got Lawrence back, and you saw kind of a vintage Lawrence game just being a disruptive factor.
Yeah.
And then you saw Uchenna again.
Looked great.
Uchenna's in the backfield. Uchenna looks like he's back to pre-injury form, which is awesome. Mm-hmm. The one thing for me, who also actually looked quite good at, he didn't maybe get on the stat sheet the same way, but was affecting the pocket, was Jared Ivey. Jared Ivey had some really good rushes in this game, which I think you can see him be more of a factor. Now, the one name I left off that list, and I've seen it in the chat a bit too, is where's Boy Mafe in that? Like, the defensive line had a feeding frenzy, and Boy Mafe is not on that stat sheet. You can't tell me that Boy Mafe was getting double and triple teamed in this game to the fact of being non-relevant. Like, it's starting to become really concerning with that. But, one thing I loved in this game, Mike Macdonald got really creative with the fronts, stunts, simulated pressures. All of that stuff became way more focused in this game compared to what it was versus the Buccaneers. You saw Nikim and Nwosu get brought in on a couple blitzes and such, and even Ernest Jones. What did you make of the front seven's effect on this game?
I think it just like hit home the belief that I think you and I and a lot of people have of, man, this pass rush when healthy and when clicking might be so good that like they can make like a New York Giants level type of, run back in the days of Umanura and Strahan and Tuck. Like, it is that dominant. And again, Trevor Lawrence sacked 6 times, has done a good job. Liam Cohn doing a good job getting that offensive line like in a good spot, and we just made it look like it was the 2017 Seattle Seahawks offensive line, right? That's how bad it looked. A lot of veterans, right? I think that's kind of that worry is like, man, can Uchenna and DeMarcus hold up over a course of a season? Well, we saw what they can do in one game when they're feeling good. And right now they both look like they turned the clock back 3 or 4 years. And yeah, Boy Mafe is not getting it done, right? Derek Hall is going to come back probably after the bye, would be my guess. We'll see. If we get enough depth, it should allow both of those guys to not get overused, right? And to be fresh and to be like still at their best. And I just think that quartet, even if Boy Mafe is this disappointment, like that's still one of the best quartets in the NFL. And you pair that with a great trio in the inside, and no disrespect to Jarran Reed, but like you're looking at potentially 2 blue chip all pro level talents. an all-pro level play at the defensive tackle spot with both Big Cat and Byron Murphy. Like, Big Cat is he just is the most underrated and underappreciated defensive lineman in the NFL, right? Like, this feels like Michael Bennett all over again, just in a different form, if that makes sense. And then Byron Murphy just looks like the man that we were hoping for. Like, the 2 sacks is awesome. He probably missed another one, but like 7 pressures from your defensive tackle. Oh, and by the way, like, Travis Etienne's not going to run at all. Trevor Lawrence is not going to run at all. Like, this defensive front has taken away everyone's ability to run the football. And that will play in January. That is what will get you a division title and get you a chance to win playoff games. That is how you pull off upsets on the road. And then on top of that, the pressure that you apply from the inside with Murphy and Big Cat, and then a good enough quartet right now is what I would say, a good enough when you get Hall back, of Hall, Uchenna, and DeMarcus Lawrence. And yeah, maybe that quartet ends up becoming Ivy if Boye Mafe doesn't produce, right? But at the end of the day, it's just one of those things where I just feel like that is the heartbeat of our team right now, is that front 7, and specifically that defensive line. That is a Super Bowl, like, you can get to a Super Bowl because of that defensive line. That is how I truly feel. Do I think they're a pass rusher short? Yes. But other than that, I think everything is there to just absolutely carry this team right now. And for them to do what they did to a hot team like Jacksonville, and what they have done to shut down the running game throughout everything. Like I just said, I think that's the biggest story, is this is a team that's been gashed for 3 or 4 years in the run, it felt like, when it mattered most. And now, right now, it just seems like they're running into just a seawall, essentially.
Yeah, it's definitely a conversation to be had about what they do going forward with this defensive line, especially on the edges, because you can't rely on Lawrence and Uchenna to be your main producers there. You need to have some other guys step up. And the thing with Mafe is, I don't know what's going on there, that he's like fallen off, the map. And to the point of some people in the chat saying, well, Hall didn't look much better. Hall may not have been getting the sacks, but his pressure rate and his effect on the pocket was way more noticeable.
100%, yes.
Boye Mafe was, because even in that Buccaneers game, the first drive that Hall was in there, he was getting close to getting sacks on Baker Mayfield and affecting that pocket and pushing Baker out of it. Hall has definitely had more of a presence this year. The sacks may not have come, but I think they were closer to coming than they are for Boye Mafe at this point. I think the conversation is also happening in the chat about, do we trade Boye Mafe? Is he become a more viable trade piece? I don't know, depending on how Seattle, to your point about depth, they may want to keep that in the fold this year while they're making their run and they're pushing the playoffs. But I don't think Boye Mafe is getting a contract extension in Seattle at the rate he was expecting he was going to get it going into this offseason.
No, 100%. And I think it's hard to foresee a team being interested in Mafe, considering you're only going to get him for 10 games, if that, right? Like, unless a team is very interested, and we are very interested in one of their players, and it's like we get that player and they get Mafe plus a pick, right? And like they would like to get their hands on him for a little bit and see if he's worth giving a contract to, and that might be. Maybe there's a team that scouted him in the draft a couple years ago and loved him, and we just sniped him from them, and that coaching staff just happens to still be there, or they're at a different spot. And they said, hey, I think I can turn that guy into the 10, 11 sack guy. Let's get him for 10 games and let's see if we can get a good contract. Sure, maybe that works, but it takes 2 to tango. It's a two-way street, and there's got to be a player on that side. It's like, why? There's one that and it just doesn't make sense in my opinion, but unless the Cincinnati Bengals or the Miami Dolphins are very interested in Boye Mafe, I don't know if that makes sense to make that deal, because we're not making any trade of Boye Mafe without a premier pass rusher coming back that we think is a much better player than Boye Mafe for the 2025 season. Am I wrong in thinking that?
I don't think you're wrong in thinking that at all, because you're going to get a decent comp pick in that for 2027 out of it. Same as what we talked about with Reek Woolen. It's the same kind of conversational piece. They're better on your roster right now as depth or that type of thing than they are sitting on someone else's roster, and you get weaker by virtue of that unless, like I said in the past, you bring in a Trey Hendrickson or Max Crosby or someone like that to fill that void. So those are the kind of things. But let's talk about this, Mike. And I know there's some people in chat that are annoyed that we're talking about negative things. Well, guess what? It wasn't all roses and sunshines with the Seahawks victory. And I'm not going to mince words with that. Yeah, they won 20-12 over the Jacksonville Jaguars, and it was a great game in some aspects. But no way is this team complete to being a Super Bowl contender or a team that's consistent week in and week out. And that's the thing that we're kind of talking about here in the show. And we're going to always talk about that in an honest, non-objective way. But looking at this, the good I would say in this game, I'll give you my 3 good things. Darnold again, the Darnold JSN connection. I'm going to put him in as 1. The defense rallying and coming back, and the defense's pressure was big. And again, they didn't take a boatload of penalties, which was good to see again. So those are my 3 good things that I took out of those. What were yours?
It's great to see Kupp score a touchdown. It was great to see him make that big 30-yard catch right out of halftime. Just a beautiful, quick, just absolute jab haymaker coming out of halftime to extend the lead and kind of separate yourself for the rest of the game. And Kupp did a big part of that, converting a first down, breaking a tackle, staying on his feet. He just looks like he's still got it, right? He just hasn't seen a lot of targets and a lot of opportunity, but every time he's caught the ball, he looks good. He looks fresh and healthy. And then for him to score that touchdown, it was a perfect throw, a perfect route. Just that classic route that we saw him and Jared Goff and Matt Stafford do for 5 or 6 years in Los Angeles against our Seahawks. And you're going to need him as the season comes along. At some point, someone's going to say enough is enough. I'm not going to let JSN beat us. You kind of saw that in the Cardinals game, and we were actually able to run the ball pretty well in that game. And our tight ends absolutely feasted on the Cardinals. Maybe if that happens again, that's the Cooper Kupp game, right? And we'll see what DeMeco Ryans does here when he comes to Seattle on Monday Night Football. But it was good to see, hey, when push comes to shove, he still got it, right? How does that contract age? I don't know, but for now, that looked good. And then again, I just thought the next man up mentality of that secondary, that there was some goofs, there was some mistakes, but they also gave it their best with what they had. I thought Kobe Bryant had one of his better games of the year. Sounds like he got called out before the game by Mike Macdonald in the middle of the week, and he responded. He set the tone. I can't remember how many screenplays that the Jacksonville Jaguars ran against us, or bubble screens, and we just shut them down. And that has been historically a horrific thing for us to guard and a horrific thing for us to do on offense. And so it was nice to see that. Again, I think the pieces are coming back, and this defense is going to come back. This defense is much closer to the best of what we saw in Jacksonville than the worst of what we saw in Tampa Bay. And that should be, a big amount of praise. And then shout out to Jason Myers, right? Swing moment there. Their kicker misses because DeMarcus Lawrence gets a massive, massive sack. And he just absolutely shanked that kick. And then we go down and he makes his 50-plus yard field goal, took care of business. Our special teams continues to be one of the best in the league. And that's another thing. How do you pull off an upset in January? You stop the run, you play good defense, you take care of the ball, and you win the special teams battles. It's like Beamer ball, right? In Virginia Tech for all those years. There is a method to that madness. And so I felt really good about how we played despite that game feeling closer than it did in certain spots.
Yeah, and so for me, the still concerning factors on this team, Mike, are our red zone. We went 1 of 3. That red zone sequence there, just in the first half of the game, the 3 runs in a row right into a brick wall. It was okay, we've got play action. We've got receivers that can get really good separation within certain small areas. Why are we not at least trying 1 or 2 play actions in there? Boot Sam out, run something. You also got Elijah Royal. Get him marked out as an X and try a one-on-one shot play with him. It just made no sense to me to bang our head 3 times into a brick wall, which was the Jacksonville Jaguars defense, with almost similar looking plays each time. It wasn't, there was even a variance of okay, we're going to do a toss, and now we're going to line up in gun and try and run the inside zone. And now we're going to, now we're going to go do something different. It was just, let's bang our head in the wall 3 times and say, yeah, we're going to be a tough team, when there's still issues along the blocking assignments of that O-line. The other one for me, late game drive stalls. We fizzled out in the fourth quarter offensively. We got the ball back. I think it was with, 4 minutes left, and we went 1, 2, 3 and out. 1, 2, 3 and out. It was we need to be able to sustain drives there. As much as we talk about early in this year, this defense being able to close out games. When we get the ball with 4 minutes left, we should be able to close out a game. A game that we 100%. Need to win, close it out, take 3 minutes off that clock, kick a field goal, whatever it is, make that a more challenging comeback for the other team. We weren't able to do that. Again, I think this third part of me for concerning gets fixed with Love, Woolen, and Spoon coming back, but the coverage breakdowns in the back end with guys open by like 10 or 15 yards. You can't have that happening at an NFL level. And I think that's a lot to do with backups playing, but still, like, these backups have now played enough. Like, you think about Okada, you think about, some of the other guys. Job had a bad game, in my opinion. Like, Josh Job looked bad in this game. Like, he looks like he's starting to regress rather than playing at the level he was early on in the year. Mm-hmm. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But yeah, I don't know. Corner could be even something Seattle looks at. But those are my three kind of main concerning factors still with this team. What about you?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, and I agree with everyone else, is we still haven't been able to break through at the running game. And I don't think this would be as big of a deal if you didn't base your entire offseason on figuring out how to run the football, right? And I think this would be just an absolute disaster if we didn't have an elite passing offense right now, which is just one of those things where how does that age throughout the course of a 18-week, 17-game season and into the playoffs, right? What happens when you can't throw the football? Are you going to be able to run the football? And Seattle has to figure out a way to do that. That red zone was horrific. You have Sam Darnold, who's one of the best red zone quarterbacks the last 2 years, right? By all measures, has been unbelievable on third down, has been unbelievable in the red zone. And then you have what I feel is the pieces to be the best red zone team in the NFL. You have a good pass blocking offense. I know you want to run the football in the red zone, but you got JSN, Cooper Kupp, just absolute wizards in space and creating space in a small environment. And then you have AJ Barner that is just a touchdown magnet and has been successful for you in the red zone. I just would like to see them trusting Sam a little bit more. And maybe that's the next step of this growth with Sam in this offense is just like, hey, we just ran into a wall. Let's not do it 2 more times. Let's now do a play action. Okay, didn't work. Now let's spread everyone out and just tell Sam, hey, cook it. And if you get a good look, take it. If not, try and run or throw it out of bounds, and then we'll kick the field goal. We'll play for another day because he has been avoiding the turnover-worthy plays. And then, yeah, I think you're right. I understand with the defensive thing. I just, again, choose to believe that I hope when Woolen comes back, he finds his place. And I hope when Spoon comes back, he finds his place. And then I think getting Love back should help instrumentally with all of the miscommunications and stuff. And then just as Nick Emenwari continues to be more and more a part of this offense, I think that secondary will start to re-elevate itself to what we saw early in the year.
So I know earlier in the show, this is one thing I'm going to bring up, and it's something that the chat's brought up, and it was something I was going to as well, is I've been a big Jalen Sundell advocate. Since I saw him last year, I thought Jalen Sundell, potentially has the making of being a legitimate NFL starting center. From game 1 of this year to now, I've gone back and I've dove into almost every rep of Jalen Sundell. I think there needs to be a conversation at this bye week about who's your starting center going in the second half of this season. Because there's reps with Jalen Sundell, whether it's run game or pass game, and in the run game, he is getting moved and thrown around. And I think there's a conversation we had that Olu should be given a shot. And I know it might freak people out because we got these 5 starters that have relatively stayed together the whole time. And there are certain things Jalen Sundell is struggling with. And I still think center may be a position of actual addressing in this draft for Seattle, because I'm not seeing what I thought I was going to get from Jalen Sundell in the scheme. I'm not seeing the same guy we saw in the preseason. Like, Sundell in the preseason looked really good. I think a lot of that has to go with teams are running a lot of basic stuff. You're not seeing a lot of, stunts and blitzes and different things and slants and all that kind of stuff because it's all an evaluation process. There's things I think Olu does better with that understanding. And if the run game's still struggling to this point, and you are now 6 games in and you don't really have another viable option currently on your roster outside of Anthony Bradford at right guard, because Christian Haynes, maybe you give him some reps. Maybe you look at Cable doing that bye week. Who knows? But Anthony Bradford, for all intents and purposes, is going to be the starting right guard for the rest of the year, barring an injury, I think is the case. And like I said earlier, I don't think he's horrible, and I don't think he's great. I think I'm right in the middle with him with what Anthony Bradford does well and what he doesn't do well. I think maybe you make a change at center and see if that doesn't help things. And Olu has been a center, and I think to an extent, comparing, Sundell and Zabel is a little bit harder to do coming out of North Dakota State, because I think Zabel is a far superior offensive line player than Sundell ever was going to be. Olu was one of the best centers in college football his draft year. I think there's a case, and he played pretty good down the stretch last year when he came in for Connor Williams. Maybe it's time to give Olu a shot back at being the starting center. What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, when I was writing Seahawks stuff over at the other side before I came over to Field Goals, like, you can go back to that draft time. I mean, that was arguably one of my biggest crushes, was Oluwatimi, stud at Virginia Tech, gets to go to Michigan, stud at Michigan, just unbelievable numbers. I thought it was a mistake the way he fell, and it was great to see Seattle get him. I don't disagree with you. I'm not just – I think maybe you're right. Maybe after the bye you figure it out. I'm not there yet, and the only reason why I'm not there yet is just because what about the stuff that we don't know about? The calls that come from the center, the relationship with Sam, like – yeah, the running game again, if it doesn't hold up, you probably got to make that call at some point. I just wonder how much Sundell has gotten those reps and the communication, things that you probably know more than I do, as a coach, of what is expected of Sundell as a center in this scheme. But it sounds like it's a lot more than your normal average center in a different scheme. And so I just would want to make sure that Olu's the right fit to do that. Because it sounds to me like that is half of the part of being the center in this scheme as much as is the performance. But you're absolutely right. Sundell killed 2 drives with 2. I mean, you could tell Schlereth when he got to talk, when Chris Myers wasn't butchering names left and right. When Stink was talking, he was giggling. He's like, hey, if you're going to get one, you might as well get it, right? Get that holding. It wasn't even a hold. It was a tackle. And that's because Sundell got beat really bad, and it killed 2 drives that probably impacted a little bit of how we finished out that game. Because I think one of those was in the 4-minute offense or in the fourth quarter trying to run out the clock and stuff. And so as much as I love Olu, I just would want to make sure that the transition with the calls and the communication and the package of protections is there. Because I would hate to bring in a player that might be a little bit better physically, but because he doesn't read or see the things as well as Sundell might, that it causes Sam to regress or the passing offense to regress, if that makes sense.
No, and I agree. I'm just saying, if you're going to make a change potentially to try and get this work in progress to speed up a bit, that's where I think you make that change is more there than you do at right guard, because you just don't have, I think, any answer really at the right guard spot that's going to be a viable option. And the fact that Christian Haynes, for what was supposed to be kind of a minor pec injury, here's the thing. I'm not going to sit here and call a 3rd round pick a bust. It's a 3rd round pick. I'm going to say it's a 3rd round pick you swung and missed on, right? When I think of busts, I think of guys that are 1st round picks that are supposed to be franchise changers and don't. That's your bust level guy, right? A guy that's almost a surefire, sure hit prospect. I never looked at Christian Haynes as such. He was a 3rd round guard for a reason. I had expectations he would come in and start, right? But that's where, for me, when the term bust comes out, I'm kind of I'll push back a little bit. He's a swing and a miss, and we've had tons of swings and misses. Think about other guards that have come through Seattle at different points, like James Carpenter, for example. We took in the 1st round, or LJ Collier.
Wasn't a guard, but
right. But that's where I look at Christian Haynes and I go, okay, I think there's something going on. I don't think he's a fit. I don't think Christian Haynes will be on this roster next year. It's interesting to me they haven't brought him back yet to start practicing, which tells me something, that they're basically, I think, using the IR as we're stashing you kind of a thing. But let's do this last part before we get into all the questions and comments, because there's 500 people in here, and it's been awesome. There's been so many I've already locked in and clicked that we're going to go talk about. But let's look around the NFC West here, Mike. And so the 49ers lost the Bucks. The Cardinals, kind of this up and down team right now, and the Rams looked oddly offbeat the entire time playing the Ravens. Let's start with the 49ers. Obviously, they've now lost their best player, in my opinion, on their entire roster, maybe outside of Christian McCaffrey, in Fred Warner. Is this now literally the floor is falling out from underneath Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch in this team?
This sucks. I want to give credit to that coaching staff. It is unbelievable the way they have tried to hold it together with everything they have lost. But at what point is enough, right? And it was right about this time last year that enough was enough, and the 49ers fell apart. Right as the weather started to turn, so did that whole just team fall apart. It sounds like Kittle's going to start practicing this week, so the offense might start getting its life back a little bit. But at what point, but other than last year or 2 years ago, Kittle has not looked healthy, right? McCaffrey, you're just waiting for the ball to drop. Purdy feels like this is going to be an all-year thing with him and Mac, in my opinion. We still don't know when Ayuk's coming back. Pearsall's not healthy. Juwan Jennings is, like he said, playing with 5 broken ribs and a broken heart, and he said all these things that are wrong with him and stuff. It's like, all right, but it doesn't matter if you lose arguably one of the best pass rushers in the NFL and the best linebacker in the NFL. At some point, enough is enough, and I just wonder if this team is going to be able to stop anybody as this starts to go. But again, you have an incredible defensive coach in Saleh. You have an incredible offensive coach in Shanahan. They're holding it together, and I wrote about it in my article. It feels like in the next 5 or 6 weeks, the war of attrition should eventually make this a 2-team race between the Rams and the Seahawks. I hope I am right, because the 49ers just kind of feel like zombies a little bit, and you're just waiting for that double kill and that put them out of their misery and stuff. But for right now, they're holding their own. Again, we'll see after this week, right? They went to Tampa Bay. They held, they were competitive. They're going to play a Falcons team that just had one of the biggest wins in their, in the last 5 or 6 years for that franchise, over Buffalo tonight on Monday Night Football. What does that team do with Kyle Pitts, Drake London, Bijan Robinson playing the way he is, Michael Penix? I think that game's in San Francisco. But what does that defense look like with no Bosa and no Warner? We might get a good idea on Sunday if the Niners want to hang around in this division race. But my gut is telling me this is going to turn into a heavyweight battle between the Rams and the Seahawks.
Yeah, the way I look at the Niners right now is this, to me, almost, if they view themselves with their record, which they very well might, even with this injury to Fred Warner, they may look at themselves and say, hey, we're still in this fight for the NFC West. We're still a playoff team. I think this really adds more fuel to John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan going after Trey Hendrickson, going after one of these pass rushers to try and replace Bosa for half the year, and really making a push at it. As crazy as that sounds, because I'd be doing the opposite at this point. I'd be dialing back going, okay, let's just wait out the season, see where we're at. I think the other interesting thing will there be a quarterback controversy that starts to develop in San Francisco throughout the year? If Purdy is in and out of the lineup, and when he comes back, and say it's a 2-game stretch and Brock Purdy doesn't look so good, but then Mac Jones comes in and looks good again, what does that look like now with the contract they've given Brock Purdy and having Mac Jones there? Is this going to be another situation where it's like the 49ers are going to jump ship on one quarterback to another to save themselves some money, and they're just going through this repetitive cycle? Yeah. It'll be interesting to see what happens with that whole situation in its own right. It's its own story that's slowly developing. So what did you make of the Rams versus the Ravens game? That was interesting to me.
Yeah, incredibly bummed out that Lamar Jackson couldn't play, because I think the Ravens win that game with Lamar Jackson. And even with all the other injuries on the defensive side, I thought that was a really spirited effort from the Ravens until they gave up, if that makes sense. And I think that horrific goal line, trying to go in to get the touchdown before halftime, just killed all of their momentum, took the wind out of their sails. That took that away from being a game that was going to go down to the wire probably. And then some fluky plays, and a good drive here or there by the Rams. And they ended up winning a game that the score didn't show how close that felt, in all honesty. I mean, you forget the Ravens played 2 different quarterbacks in that game. The Ravens this is a Ravens that we've never seen before, in all honesty, right? And we may never see this bad of a Ravens team again. And for the Rams to look not good for 2 weeks in a row was concerning if you're a Rams fan. And then Puka Nakua's injury is massive, because that team goes off of Puka Nakua at this point, in my opinion. And I think just, again, it's just one of those things where it's just so hard to play us Seahawks fans, we know it's just so hard to play 17 games without having these types of injuries. And if you're not the young and up and coming team, you're going to live with that concern. And the Rams definitely feel like a team that has a few blue chips, and a lot of it is coaching after that. Because, man, if they lose Devontae or Puka, it just feels like that offense is going to fall apart. And Matt Stafford, just, again, it just looks like he's just figured out a way to get by these last 2 years. And again, I know it's led to a playoff win and a division title, and they're 4-2. But when push comes to shove and he's playing these really good teams or these really well-coached teams like we saw against the 49ers, like, I just didn't see it as much as maybe other people on ESPN or First Take or whatever see it with Matt Stafford.
Yeah, the NFC West, like, the Cardinals, obviously they lost to Indy, and Indy's a pretty good team right now with Daniel Jones at the helm, which is another thing where we talk about these reclamation projects at quarterback. If you put a team around some of these guys, they do have the talent that made them first-round picks. You look at the rest of this NFC, and I just kind of go, the Cardinals, in my opinion, are falling apart. I think Gannon's done after this year. I think this coaching stuff's done. I think there's a good shot that Kyler's done after this year in Arizona, because I think they're just going to hard reset it. They've tried to get this thing going, and it's just not working with this group. I think there's a chance there's a hard reset there. This division's really there for Seattle. Like, I don't look at the Rams as a complete team, and I think some of the Rams' areas of deficiencies that, regardless what they do, are there, which is their secondary, is something that Seattle can take advantage of. It's going to be really interesting that first game that they play the Rams, how that turns out and how the rest of the season goes. I think, really Seattle, like you said, it's a 2-team race right now. And I think Seattle is better suited to handle that race throughout the longness of the second half of the season than the Rams are. So we'll see how that kind of all shapes up. But let's talk about this a little bit, about this Houston matchup here, Mike, for us. CJ Stroud's kind of having an up and down season in some respects. This offense as a whole, with, the offensive style that they were going with, like, it's crazy to think back to that, first year with Stroud and DeMeco Ryans there and Bobby Slowick, of how that offense looked to now what stage it's at now. The defense is still playing really good. Like, they have some amazing defensive players, but this defense cannot continue to carry this team in week out. How do you see, what would be some early keys to the game for you, for Seattle to get a win on Monday night?
Yeah, I think, can you get the type of pressure that you got on Trevor Lawrence? Can you do that to CJ Stroud against a much worse offensive line, right? Like, the offensive line for the Houston Texans is one of the worst in the NFL. I think Jeff Simmons talked about it a lot over the course of the summer, that just the offseason plan of how to protect CJ Stroud was just an absolute embarrassment, right? Just an absolute disservice to such a talented player in CJ Stroud. When he does have time, him and Nico Collins is a lethal combination, and that is something Seattle's going to need to prepare for. But until this team can prove that they can protect Stroud or run the football, I really feel like this is a game where Seattle should control the Houston Texans on that side of the ball. The question is, can they take care of the ball, and can they move the football against probably another team very similar in the sense of, like, the pieces are there for a Super Bowl run defensively. It's just that offensive line is so pathetic. It's makes it just not believable that Houston can win 3 playoff games and get to a Super Bowl. But, Danielle Hunter, some of the pieces, Derek Stingley, like, some of the pieces on that offense or that defense is going to be really interesting. How does JSN do against that secondary and a highly paid, high-level corner? I'm trying to think, has JSN faced a better cornerback than what he's going to face on Monday night? Should be really interesting. How does our tackles do against one of the better pass rushers that we've seen, other than Nick Bosa before he got hurt? That's another, good test for Cross and Abe Lucas. And then again, it's just, I know it's not necessarily like a key or anything, but man, can you get the monkey off your back? Prime time, home game. You're even playing the game at a weird time at 7:00 at night. That's 9:00 in Houston. Like, does that mean anything? I don't know. I mean, people in Houston, they party till the sun comes up. If you know, you know. Like, and so, like, I'm just saying, like, there's just the pieces are there. The matchup I actually really like for us to really hold down the Houston Texans. You have to get the monkey off your back. You have to win this game. You can get to 5-2. I know it's only been 2 years, but like that's just a big difference than what we saw last year with Mike Macdonald going 3-0, 3-3, then going on a little bit of a run and stuff. Like just the vibes are different. And I think there's a lot to getting a Monday night win at home over a team that's been a 2-time division champion, has won playoff games. The fan base starts to feel the juice, and then you head into a bye where you can either be aggressive at the deadline during your bye, and you can prepare for a big game at DC on Sunday Night Football, which I know they lost to the Bears tonight on a fluky kind of fumble, but like that's another measuring stick game of where we're at.
Yeah, it really is a measuring stick game. You have to get the ship righted at home. You cannot be we only win games on the road type of team. Like, yeah, you beat the, New Orleans Saints, who are probably the worst team outside of the Jets and the Browns in the NFL this year. But you got to win games like this at home. It helps bring back the mentality of the 12th man. They got, be loud, all those kind of things. And like you said, 7:00 kick, that's a different thing all in its own right. Should be good. What would you say, Mike, is your biggest key in this game for Houston? Like, what is your number one? Seattle has to do this to win.
I think you have to run the ball 5 to 10% better than you have been to keep that pass rush off, because I do think this is not a great matchup for our tackles against their pass rush. And I think JSN may not be able to be as dominant as he's been, if you believe that Stingley's going to be able to keep up with him. I'm not saying Stingley's going to shut down JSN, but I think if you can run the ball up the middle at this defensive line just a little bit, that can free up those play actions. Like Sam Darnold was amazing on Sunday, right? You take away 2 61-yard plays, it's not exactly like we're getting massive chunk plays consistently in the intermediate passing game. Like that was again last Sunday against a good defense. We were dinking and dunking and figuring it out, and then we got 2 big plays. That was 122 of his 295 passing yards. And so if you want to continue that formula that has led you to a 4-2 start, I think with this defense in this environment, I don't know what the weather's going to be like. I think you're going to be able to need to figure out how to run the football. And I think right now our best chances is you need to get Kenneth Walker going, right? I think Charbonnet has proven – I think Sharbs has proven he's just not going to be the guy unless he's the guy, if that makes sense. He needs the volume. He needs the warm-up. He needs to get into the game. Whereas K9, just the talent is just so much more with K9, in my opinion, that if he has the ability to stay focused, attack the inside, that's when those bounce outs will come, and that's when you'll get those home runs or those big explosive plays. And so I feel like we're going to keep saying this almost every week for me, but if they can just continue to run the football a little bit better, then we're going to continue to see MVP level play from JSN, and the tight ends are going to continue to play well, and Sam Darnold's going to continue to play like a top 10 player in the league.
So my X factor, my biggest key, I should say, in this game is I want to see Seattle just absolutely destroy the interior of the Houston Texans offensive line, and one player in particular, and that's Laken Tomlinson. Let Big Cat and Byron Murphy just feast on that guard, and just let's see what happens. Let them go right after Laken Tomlinson. Mike should just bring as much pressure as he can right through that gap and see how much he can collapse the pocket on CJ Stroud. My X factor in this game is going to be the tight ends, AJ Barner and Elijah Arroyo, and especially they need to get going. And AJ Barner, yes, I know he had 3 catches for 71 yards, and he's been really productive this year. But get him more involved in the games initially, I think, is something they need to start doing, and not just certain areas of the field. Like, let him actually be a viable part. Like, because AJ Barner, to me, and I said this to Mookie Alexander when we were in training camp, I get such John Carlson vibes from AJ Barner as a tight end. He can block well, he can run and catch, he can do some of those things, and that's what John Carlson was so good. Just concussions and injuries caught up to John Carlson, but when he was playing, he was a really good tight end for Seattle.
Yeah.
That
Absolutely.
is immediately the vibes I get of AJ Barner.
Yeah, and I think Barner is a guy that's a blocker and a football player that's learned to play tight end, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
And I saw someone say, like, just draft dudes that, like, love to block and hit people and teach them how to play tight end. Those are the ones that end up being the more successful, productive guys than – I don't mean to shit on Kyle Pitts, but, like, Kyle Pitts is a wide receiver that's too big, and so they're trying to make him move inside. And I'm not saying Elijah Arroyo's like that at all. I actually think Arroyo's done a good job in what he's been asked to do. And total bummer if he doesn't slip on that little, cut route there in that play, he might still be running, right? I think he had that guy beat. I think that was a big play. But yeah, it's not one of those things where it's like, hey, you drafted him where you drafted him, you need to give him the ball more. But I just really think this team, their best drives this year, that drive against the Arizona Cardinals, there was a drive with Tampa Bay, a Saints one. When they feed the tight ends, it sucks everything in, and that's where you get some of those other explosive plays. And again, Arroyo and Barner, and even Saubert, even when he's been in there, like, I just feel like good things happen when you're in 12 personnel. I think it leads to good runs out of K9. I think that's where he's at his best as well, as long as Utes is still out. And so I love that. I really agree. Like, let's put Aziz Shair, however you say his name, like let's put him in a blender this week and see if he can keep up with this 12 personnel.
I agree. So we'll see what happens, and I'll talk more about that on the preview show that'll come out later this week, but we'll discuss more of that at that point. But let's get into some of these questions and comments you guys have had. You've all been kind of waiting patiently for this. So let's start with some of these, Mike. So first one is from Islam. He goes, JSN is the best wideout in the game now, and Sam Darnold is a top 10 QB, and the direction of this franchise is in good hands under Mike with the amount of injuries he's putting up with in the secondary.
Hard to disagree from my end.
I have to see the games being won at home. That's the thing for me right now.
Yep.
Like, I agree with the JSN. I agree with the Sam Darnold part. I do think the organization is in good hands. We have to see it translate at home. We're saying this a lot after big wins on the road. Yeah, we're 9-1 on the road now, and that's awesome. I'm not trying to take that away. But the record we have at home is abysmal. It's not good. It's not a winning football team or organization's goal to be below 500 at home and this excelling road team. If you look at a lot of teams that end up in the Super Bowl, it's because they capitalize on their home games and have a massively different home record versus their away record.
Yeah.
And we basically flipped that. And it's like, everyone talks about, it'd be great to have a home game in the playoffs at Lumen Field. I'd rather go on the road with the way this team's playing than stay at home. Like, that's where, like, to your point, this is such a big game at home versus Houston. They need to buck this trend of how they're dealing with their home games. Whether, I don't know if they change the hotel they stay at the night before the game at home, because some teams do that, or the pregame meal, whatever it is. Start changing something so you figure out what works and you can actually win at home, because right now that's the biggest thing I think holding this team back. All right. Ian Victor's in here, our moderator. Love having Ian in. He goes, good win overall. Need to really improve the run game, one game at a time. I agree. The run game still needs work. Is still a work in progress. Doesn't mean stop doing it. You just need to find ways to make it more consistent. John McGrath, always good to have John in here. Run game will get better when Utes is healthy. I do think Utes is a big missing factor in this, because they're not running nearly as much as 21 personnel with, Brady Russell in there, which is, I think, a big miss factor in this offense.
For sure. I agree.
Kendrick Lamar, one more solid draft by John Schneider, and I'm feeling a dynasty bring. I don't know if I'll go that far yet.
I mean, sure, if you want to draft an all-pro interior offensive lineman and then also get an all-pro blue-chip defensive edge, and then you get a nice KJ Wright in there, and then you also, in the 5th round, you get another Richard Sherman at cornerback to replace Woolen. Like, this team, like, if you told me, hey, the Seahawks go to the Super Bowl this year, would I be surprised? Yes. Would I be shocked? No, because I think there are some really fascinating pieces that have outplayed expectation. And I also think the NFC is the worst NFC we have seen in
100%.
years. I want to say maybe even decades. So like that shouldn't take away from anything, but you're still 3 or 4 great players away from being like where Philadelphia and Kansas City have lived for the last half decade.
Agreed. John comes back with any negatives I saw where the offense seemed to get bogged down in the fourth quarter and Mafe didn't do anything. Again, those are what things we talked about already in this show is, to that point. Mafe was 1 tackle. That's all he had all game, 1 tackle.
Not going to do it.
Nope, that's not going to cut it. So, Ian, at this point, I'm okay if we trade Mafe and Charbonnet. I'm not on the Charbonnet trade bandwagon, and I still think they need Mafe for depth once everyone's healthy.
I agree. Yeah.
Islam comes back, feels like Tyrese Knight isn't a long-term solution at one of the linebacker spot since he hardly has played. I think Knight's a wash this year. I think next year will be interesting to see what they do at that position. If they address it in the draft, it'll really, to my point, I think earlier, I think it's more is not nearly as comfortable or can play as fast in the upgraded playbook.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Unless we hear
again,
otherwise, it's got to do with that injury.
Right, 100%. And I know we talked about it last week, and I'll say again, like I wrote about it last week for Saturday, just some players to watch for college football. And I wrote about like Arvell Reese from Ohio State, linebacker, and just doing some scouting. Like this draft class is definitely not a superstar. If you're looking for a franchise savior, you've come to the wrong place with this draft that's coming up. But man, if you want plug and play linebackers, this is the draft for you. Like I've got 3, and I'm the typical guy where based by position, I don't necessarily rank players as high. Like I very rarely have running backs or middle linebackers as super high like draft grades, just because I think you can get good players at lower spots. But I've got 3 first-round linebackers right now. That's how amazing this class is. And it's more than just those guys. But like, don't be surprised if the first pick in the draft ends up being a linebacker. That makes you completely forget about Tyrese Knight. Yeah,
exactly. So W. Jack comes in. He goes, I understand, Bryce, but Bradford, etc. more. However, please, Bradford and others, you are right. What what is still not going right? But tell us, who do you have to replace those is no good. Again, I said this throughout the show talking about Bradford. I'm not in this Bradford is an elite player or really good player or he's a horrible player. I'm in this middle ground where I think Bradford's pass protection has gotten exceptionally better. I think overall he's gotten better, but I don't think he is the answer because there are way too many inconsistent plays in the run game. Then coupled with what we talked about with Sundell leads to having 2 incomplete players at points in your offensive line can cause a struggle point. So again, I don't know if there's anyone on this roster. I'm not saying there's anyone or someone that you're going to trade for, but I don't think they're sitting there going, yeah, Anthony Bradford is a solid, non-negotiable starter on the Seahawks offensive line going forward for the next, 2 seasons or whatnot with him.
Yeah.
I think it's a conversation that we brought up again in the offseason that they may be looking for a right guard. They drafted Zabel. They may still go look for a right guard in the draft. They may still view Christian Haynes as a viable option. Who knows how they view him inside that building? We don't know. But I think there's going to be conversation. All I'm saying is the whiffs Anthony Bradford is having in the run game for a player that is supposed to be a road grading right guard. That is what he is known for. His run blocking this year is nowhere near as good as it should be, whereas pass blocking has gotten exceptionally better, which is great. And that's what I'm saying about Bradford. I'm not saying I don't want Bradford to start. I'm just stating the fact that there are issues in his game still that are causing problems for Seattle in some aspects.
Right.
John Doe goes, JSN.
Whoa, why would you even say that? What the heck, man?
But it's a viable point, and this is what we were talking about with they need to manifest other targets to other players, whether it's Arroyo, Barner, Cup, Horton, even. Like, get more guys involved. And you know what the weird thing is, Mike, about this offense? I didn't really touch on this yet, but the lack of targets to the running backs. Yeah. Considering how much Kamara and that group was involved in the pass game in New Orleans, like, it's quite interesting how little K9 and Charbonnet are used in this passing game.
Yeah, especially because wasn't that kind of a big part of Charbonnet's game at UCLA? He was known as being that kind of guy. I don't think we've ever really seen it here in Seattle. And that might be a coaching thing. That might just be his evolution from the Pac-12 to the NFC West and stuff, but we kind of knew that was never a thing with K9. And it just sucks. It kind of is like, where's George Holani in that? Because I would actually like to see him, because I feel like Holani is such a freaking dog in special teams. I'd love to get him a few touches just to reward him, which that kind of right now might just have to be, hey, we have to be up 2+3 scores to do that. But like, where is he on 3rd and 8 as maybe like that rare draw that catches everyone off guard? Or where is he for a one screenplay a game, or one little nice little like just, block, check and release route? Like, I'm just curious that we just don't have that with Holani, because that feels like exactly what he's built for, other than being a borderline Pro Bowl special teams guy so far.
John comes back in with, we need to put Maffei's picture on some milk cartons because he's gone missing all year. I wouldn't be opposed to that one. Oh, Ian's got a real question to really think. Do they really trade Reek Woolen? No, they're not trading Reek, I don't think. Unless they're getting some massive haul back.
Let's pin this one and we'll come back and take a look at it. I think they will trade him after this week. I think they will trade him during their bye.
Wow.
And we'll come back and we'll come back and look after the deadline and see if you're right or I am. But I think they will trade him.
Okay. Paulie comes in with Jermaine Johnson from the Jets would be someone to keep an eye for as an edge player. Yeah, actually, that's an interesting one.
I really liked him out of the draft. I know that was a terrible draft, and that's who I wanted. I was like, man, if you're not going to get – I can't remember what offensive tackle I wanted, or if you're not going to get Thibodeau, give me Jermaine Johnson. And then I was like, all right, we'll see if Cross can become something, which that's worked out, right? And that was a terrible draft. I think Seattle's really lucked out by taking Cross, and he's been, again, nobody's talking about Charles Cross, which means he's doing that good of a job, which is awesome.
Oh, yeah. The other interesting name, and I got to give credit to, I think Chris Clough put this out on Twitter, which, by the way, is a really good follow for Seahawks fans. Follow Chris. Keon White in New England.
Would love that, man. Just basically wrong coach came to New England.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. He would be used so much better in Seattle than what he's being used in New England. And he's a
absolute
good young
weapon
player
for Macdonald.
Yeah. Howard M comes in. Do you guys think JS and Mike Macdonald will be looking in the draft and trade for more of these hybrid safety linebacker type players?
You just mentioned it. These the three linebackers I'm talking about is Anthony Hill, who just embarrassed my Sooners. He's a linebacker for Texas. Can probably play, would be I think I've mentioned this, a perfect like duo to what Ernest Jones does at the middle. Arvell Reese and Sonny Styles from Ohio State are both dudes that are big enough to play the linebacker, but are also quick enough that if you needed them in the pinch to do some coverage stuff, they could. Those are probably the three best coverage linebackers that I have watched in the last 3 or 4 years, to be honest with you, coming out of the draft. And so is that exactly like a Nick Eamon-Worry type? No, but those are like just the modern day linebackers that can do it all, if that makes sense.
Be an interesting thing to see what they do with this draft class this year, because even the limit of picks, where do they actually put the value of those picks to be?
Right.
And our boss comes in here, Mookie Alexander. He goes, this is a great interior D-line when Jaron Reed has been the quietest of the trio of him, Big Cat, and Murphy. Yeah, he really has this year. I think it's because they've had him play a lot more of the nose stuff, and that's freed up Murphy to do a lot more of what he's been doing in some respects.
Right.
Next one in here is Mookie again with, I had high hopes for Maffei, but he's seemingly a rich man's Darrell Taylor as an edge rusher, except he's a better tackler and run defender. Yeah, in a lot of ways, he's
it's pretty good.
He is.
I don't know if I have a least favorite player during the end of Russ era, Geno era than Darrell Taylor. Gosh, I just couldn't stand the amazing jump and overrunning every single time.
So Jason James comes in here. He goes, nobody said it was complete or incomplete. It's week 6 and a work in progress. Did anyone think this passing game would look this good in the preseason? I doubt it. No, that's a fair point, Jason. Like, this passing game has definitely exceeded expectations in a lot of ways. I think the biggest part is the receivers have exceeded the expectations of what we thought this group was going to look like, and the lack thereof speed. And how are we going to get vertical shots down the field? And JSN's proved he can do everything inside and out. And the play action games really helped it too. So it's definitely been a very pleasant and welcome surprise for sure.
Yes.
Any other ones? Let's see in here. We've got, this is a good one. Alana comes in with Kubiak is fixating too much on JSN. Need to change it up so teams fear other players and can't just double JSN. They have to worry about Barner, Arroyo, and Cup. Yeah, that's a fair point.
Has that happened yet, though? Other than the Arizona game, and then he awoke in the fourth quarter. I'm not disagreeing. Like, obviously, yes, you're not wrong, but like, I guess when is that going to happen? I'm trying to think who's going to do that to him.
Well, here's what I'll say. He'll get a bit of a test versus Houston, but really what team has got the secondary to actually do that?
Mm-hmm.
That's the other, kind of question.
Yeah, and maybe that is Houston is a good look because that's our first I would consider Stingley a premier corner. Maybe that's that first shot. And like if he cooks him, then maybe it's like the NFL's like, all right, fine. Like you're getting the Jamar Chase treatment or you're getting the Jefferson treatment. Like we're just not going to let you beat us type of a move.
Ian comes in with, we also need to not shoot ourselves in foot and not commit dumb penalties and turnovers at home. Yeah, that's a fair point. And Paulie adds on to this. I wonder if the home crowd noise don't adversely affect our defense's communication at home. That's one thing I've actually kind of wondered with too, in a point, Mike, is Pete Carroll's defenses didn't communicate up until usually the last second or two before the snap of the ball. They usually were pretty set in what they were going to do. Yep. Where we know with Mike's defense is very much the opposite. They're constantly moving, they're communicating and all that. I wonder if that does inadvertently have an effect on our defense at home too. But the defense has played okay at home.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, other than the Tampa Bay game, which has a very, real built-in excuse, like I feel like they've done a good job. But yeah, it is an interesting thing. There is definitely a lot more moving pieces and a lot more communication and a lot more creativity and just stuff that goes into Mike's defense compared to what Pete ran in the heyday.
Alana came in with, they've said it does. One of the players said it. I wonder who that was, actually. That'd be a good thing to figure out who said that. Curious. Paulie on the Sam Darnold JSN thing, he goes, I think JSN is just always one of his first reads that happens to be open, so he rips it. Yep, that's very, very true. Those are some really good comments and questions, guys. Love the interaction with you guys, but we're going to wrap this show up here in the next minute or so here. So, Mike, what's some upcoming content you've got coming out over there on Field Goals?
Yeah, so just dropped this afternoon my 4-down territory, just kind of breaking down some of the biggest keys and takeaways from the win yesterday against the Jaguars. So go check that out over at Field Goals. There's a lot of other great stuff over at Field Goals. And then, been also, if you're looking for some college football stuff, I know it's early, but if you're looking at guys that Seattle Seahawks fans should be looking for, I had an article on Saturday breaking down some players, hit a few Oregon Ducks. So if you have a player or a team that you want me to curse, just, tweet at me or send me a message and ask me what player you'd like me to curse. That way your team will lose as well. And who else did I talk about? I talked about, Tui Ungale, talked about Kenyon Sadiq, and I think both those guys had their worst game of their Oregon careers on Saturday.
Here's my word. Don't ever talk about a single Washington Huskies player this season and we'll be fine.
Sounds good. I will. I even talked about Tyson at Arizona State, and I know that he didn't have Sam Levitt, but yeah, I'll maybe I'll write about Boston. I don't know. We'll maybe talk about him as a
stay
Seahawks.
Away from the freaking Seahawks, man. Don't go or the Huskies. Don't go anywhere near them.
The Huskies. All right, fine, but yeah.
But yeah, no. Outside of that, over here on the Hawks side, I've got Corbin Smith coming on for a show, and we're going to kind of dive into the first 6 games of the season for the Seahawks and what he kind of thinks.
Are you going to talk? Are you going to talk Toronto Blue Jays with him?
I might make a few Toronto Blue Jays questions and comments in there for Corbin, just because I know how this ALCS is going in his eyes right now. But you got Corbin coming on. I'll have another Hawks Film Lab with Dan Vians coming out, and then we'll have our Seahawks live post-game show this week. So for anyone that hasn't already, and I know there's 600 of you guys in here, and a lot of you guys are over there on the Twitter side, but please like and subscribe, click the notification button, help me push this channel up over 2,000 subscribers, get me up over top. So yeah, guys, help out with that if you can. Appreciate all the support, as is though, from everybody that's in here. It's always great. And other than that, guys, we will see you later this week over here on the Hawks Eye, and we'll see you next. I guess it'll be next Tuesday. We'll probably do another post-game Seahawks aftermath, considering how late that game is. And oh, yeah, by the way, guys, if you haven't already, I will be doing a live watch party with Brandon King of the Hawk Nest, doing the Monday night game. Me and Brandon will do color of announcing and color commentary for that game. So if you're interested in that, come on over and, have your game tuned up with us, and we'll announce and commentate on it as the game goes. But other than that, everyone, have a really good night. Go Mariners, go Hawks.
Yeah.
We'll see you all
Go
later
Mariners,
this
go
week.
Hawks.